Hi, welcome to Yoga with Jenny. Today we're working on tree pose. So I'm calling this easing into tree pose. We're working, of course, on hip opening, meaning that lateral rotation and that flexibility in the adductors, as well as strengthening the standing side, including our feet and arches. So let's go ahead and get started. You'll need a strap, you'll need a couple of blocks, and a blanket as always if it helps you feel more comfortable seated, kneeling, and prone and supine postures. We're going to come down and bring our blocks with us. And we'll start with just the breath, as always. Notice where you feel the breath most prominently in your body. Whether it's in your nostrils, your throat, your chest, your ribs, or your belly. And then just simply begin by expanding your awareness to encompass all those areas where the breath can go. And bringing your breath there. Three-dimensionally feeling your body opening and accordioning or closing back in. So first we'll start with a very soft, passive relaxation into our tree opening pose. So I'm going to turn one knee open and support it. I've rolled onto the outer edge of the foot and I'm supporting my thigh with a block. Now you do want to keep your pelvis more or less steady, hip bones up to the ceiling, but let your leg rest. So in other words, if I have less flexibility, my block is going to be higher. If I have a little more flexibility and more stability, control, my block can be lower. But do use a block, even for those who can get to the floor. Chances are very good that you've twisted in order to get to the floor. And then begin to breathe and relax into this position. Those adductor muscles, sometimes adductors are really tight. It's a strange area that sometimes tends to grab. We tend to hold on. Go ahead and turn that knee back up to the center, and you're going to turn the other knee open with support. Oh, I've got the pole in the way here. You can also do this with your other leg long, so it looks exactly more or less like tree pose, but you can leave it up. It is a little softer on the lower back. Good, bring that knee back upward. Moving from that softness, that passive and supported position in our tree pose. Now we'll practice moving into it actively. I've got my hands on my hip bones and I'm going to take a deep breath in. But then as I exhale, I'm thinking about that wraparound strength. So yes, it's around my belly, but it's around my hips and it's around my ribs to keep this part of my body still as the leg turns open. And then inhale to come back up. This is a great therapeutic exercise for the lower back SI joint issues, by the way. Exhale to move while you keep yourself still. Inhale to turn the knee back up. And then do the other side 3 or 4 times. Remember, it's not a flopping open, it's completely smooth and controlled motion. Make sure your other leg isn't wavering. Back up to the top. Hug those knees up to your chest. Rock it out. Go to your first side that you did and now hunt down your strap and place it across the ball of the foot. You could also alternatively use a TheraBand or any other brand of stretchy band that you have lying around. The advantage is then, of course, you can work with strengthening in the foot if if you have that TheraBand. But I'm going to do it with a traditional yoga strap too. So I've got it around the ball of the foot, and this is where a yoga strap is great because it's flat, you know, it doesn't stretch, it doesn't have that movability. So what I'm looking for is, I'm looking at my foot, starting with that foundation, starting to think about my foundation when I'm standing. This is essentially like standing on the ceiling. So if you look at the ball of your foot, which are these bones at the base of your toes, you shouldn't see one part of the ball kind of tipping up to the ceiling. So those tips and turns at the ankle, we think it's just about our ankle being weak. But remember that, of course, that's the bottom of that kinetic chain. And then when we stand on it, those gravitational forces travel all the way up through our knee, our hip, which is our core, our lower back, up through the rib cage and beyond. So the ankle, the point is, it's the beginning of that kinetic chain. The foot is the beginning. If that arch is falling and the big toe is kind of pushing forward or in, then it creates this pattern of weakness, or it reflects a pattern of weakness up through the hips. So what we want to look at is that your arch be lifted. So what I want you to do is push through the ball of the foot now. We call it a flointed position. And notice again, if your metatarsal joints are twisted or your ankle is turning to either side. And then try to reach up through your toes. It's a little challenging, as I mentioned, with a yoga strap, but try to reach your toes up to a full point. And that engages the arch and the calf. Then pull the toes back without moving the ball of the foot, and then move the ball of the foot back towards you. All 5 metatarsal joints moving. Ball of the foot, and then toes, toes, and ball of the foot. So there's a lot of talk in yoga. I'm going to do it with a stretchy band to show you the difference, right? Because my toes will be in that band. We talk a lot in yoga about the toes being spread, right? Having space between the toes. And also about not scrunching or crunching your toes under. Here I am with toes kind of crunched and bent. And so the band is great for helping teach us an awareness of the foot moving into that pointed position with strength and the toes being long and strong. You know, some of those happen over time, being in a same set of shoes for many years. Hammer toes, etc. And from habit. So I'm just working with my foot to strengthen that foundation for standing postures. And then just hold on to both ends of the strap or the band, whichever you've got. And we're going to revisit that opening of the leg without the hips opening to the side, as we did in our tree pose. This time it's more like Padangusthasana, Utthita Hasta Padangusthasana, where the leg is straight and it opens. Again, don't be in a rush to get to the floor. Think more about steadiness. This knee could be straight or it could remain bent. And then come on back up to the top, bend your knee and shake it out. So you should be feeling parts of the foot, right, when you're working with that, especially if you work with resistance, right, from a resistance band. We're going to the second side. First, I just start with gently opening up through the back of the knee, breathing. Looking at my foot, looking at my ball of my foot in relation to my knee. Knee is pointed straight forward. And then can I get my ball of my foot flat? So I'm holding the ceiling up. And peeling all 5 toes equally back towards my face. Feeling like a tremendous stretch, so that's that connection along the back, that kinetic chain along the back part of my body. So now I'm going to point, but go via the ball of the foot. So this is that position in the middle known as flointing. It's flexed and pointed, and then point your toes up into the band. Pull the toes back, and then pull the ball of the foot. Ball of the foot, and then the toes, toes, and ball of the foot. And you can keep going. You know, remember, if you're using a stretchy band, keep in mind how tightly you pull on this is going to create more tension for you to work with, more strengthening. If you're struggling with flattening your toes out into the band, they're really just crunched up, then lessen the tension. And just work on, you know, letting your toes push into the band, but without crumpling over. So that takes a lot of doing, right? It takes a lot of concentration too, mental work. Come back to the center with a flexed foot, dorsiflex. Hold on to both ends of the strap with the same side hand. And then begin to move the leg, but go slowly enough that you can feel whether your body's rocking off center. Do the best you can to stay steady. And then come back to center. Take the band away, shake it out. Hopefully you're feeling a little bit along the sole of the foot, you're feeling up through your leg as well. Just rock those knees or hug your knees to your chest. And we're going to come up to a seated position. Relatively comfortable seated position, so sometimes it's better to be up a little bit higher for this short foot exercise seated. So we'll do it here. But this is, again, this is forming kind of these neural pathways for what we need to do when we're standing. Look at your feet, look at your toes. I know, sometimes feet are a little freaky. So you do want to, you know, you can give them a little assist to get the toes to kind of move a little wider. You can massage them down a little bit smoother and flatter. And then the point of this, it's often referred to as short foot, is this exercise of lifting the arches up. It's a slight degree of supination without leaning out or losing your big toes off of the floor, right? So you want your metatarsals and all 10 toes on the floor, but you're trying to feel like you're lifting your arches up. And then you can let them drop down. Now, especially over time, if your arches have fallen, right, it may be very hard to lift up. So that's when I recommend an assistant. You take your fingertips and push up into your arch, but keep your toes down. And then relax. And do that with the other side. These are great exercises to do in the bathtub, where you're a little bit slipperier, you have a little bit of soap on your feet and your hands. But you think about lifting up through the arch, but without, again, the metatarsal, you know, these joints shifting or the ankle shifting. So it does affect the joints above it, but it's more of a muscular contraction that's going to help to support the strong neutral position of the knee in the socket and the hip in the socket. I'm sorry, the knee in space and the hip in the socket. So let's come up onto hands and knees. Move through your cat and cow a couple of rounds. And sometimes it helps to feel those toes curl under, lifting up into your arch, your cow tilt. And then work with the toes flat on your cat. That can give a little bit of stretching to the toes and the base of the foot, the arch, and then some stretching to the anterior tib and the top of the foot here. And of course, an even bigger opening when we lift to downward dog. Bend and stretch, pedal through your dog pose here. Come to relative stillness. And look at your toes. Look at your feet. Look at your ankles in relation to your feet. Are they kind of leaning out to the sides? Or are they centered? Look at your kneecaps. Move forward, come to plank pose. And that could include knees down plank. Lift your core up into your body, engage your glutes a little bit. Slowly set yourself down. Bring the tops of the feet to the floor and your toes to the floor. Lifting to cobra, keeping that grounding through the feet. Deep breath. Tuck the toes under, lift your abdominals, and press up. Downward facing dog. Set the knees down. Go a little bit deeper into the lengthening that I mentioned in that cat and cow. Try to sit back into a kneeling position. If this is too much strain on your knees, of course, you can have a little separation between your feet and sit onto something. If it's really too much on the tops of your feet as well, lifting your hips up will help that. But my feet are flat now. I'm not sitting between my heels. So I'm sitting either on the heels or up on a block. Couple breaths there. Rock it forward, tuck the toes under, and now try to sit back into that position. The best you can tolerate. Right, if you do have circumstances beyond your control in the joints, that big toe joint, if it's really painful, then omit this. Obviously, stick with the tops of your feet. Good, we're gonna come to downward facing dog. Make sure you have blocks at the front edge of your mat. Step or walk feet forward. Take that pause before you start to move your body up out of this forward fold, setting your feet with intention. Even taking that moment to really spread the toes apart a little bit. Create that little space. And then look at your kneecaps. Try to point them straight forward and press down into your feet and lift your spine halfway up, elongating. Inhale. Exhale, bow forward and fold. Do it 2 more times. Notice if you're tempted to pull your toes off of the floor, or if your arches are really falling, or if your arches are really lifted and your ankles are really leaning. So just look at your alignment and make it as true and as straightforward as you can. Then put a bend in your knees, tailbone, sit bone sliding down the back of the legs to roll your spine up to neutral. Good. So here's where that short foot really comes in. And it especially is really important, of course, when we go to our one-legged stance, when we come into tree in a moment. But right here is when gravity is really acting on us, right? If I'm not talking about genetic knock-knee, because that is a thing, right? Your knees kind of come in. You can correct the foot position and get those arches to still lift by having a slightly narrower stance, even if your knees tend to pull in a little, right? You don't want them right together, because then your knees will definitely be touching. But I'm talking about the muscles, right? That muscular lift in the arches of the feet, which creates a pattern of strength and lift through the core of the body and balances out the usage of our hip muscles. So what I want you to do is stand. I'm just going to slightly widen my stance for my hips and my knees. And practice controlling, let the arches fall in a little bit. Notice how my knees do want to turn in a little bit. And then practice lifting the arches up while you keep your feet down, your toes down. And then let it go, and then lift up. This is a great exercise to do with resistance as well as you get stronger. You can put resistance around your legs, you can tie it up. And so you're trying to push against that resistance by lifting your arches up. So shortening the foot really just means doming. There is a theory out there about the body. I can't remember whose theory it is, but that shape of the arch, right, and that lift and that engagement through the arches of the feet because it has a correspondence to the shape of our pelvic floor diaphragm, our breathing diaphragm, the soft palate of the throat, that these are all connected, right? So when you, for example, have that open throat by opening your mouth, you can feel that pelvic floor lift up. So open shape, and then you can feel the muscular connection. So it's something to experiment with. Let's stand tall. Right at the front of your mat. Think about standing on your feet without collapsing in, without leaning out. Reach your arms up, lift up, inhale. Exhale, bow forward and fold, soften your knees. Inhale, lift your heart halfway up. And exhale, step back to plank pose. So I'm on the balls of my feet, my toes are pressed down, my heels reach way back in space, my tailbone and glutes are engaged, core is strong, ribs are lifted, neck and head in line. But yes, my feet are for sure a part of my plank pose. Set your knees down if you need to make your transition to come all the way down. Inhale to lift your heart to come halfway up. And exhale, lift to hands and knees. Good, so we're going to try this first on hands and knees and then move upward, making it harder and harder. One leg stretching back as in a bird dog or tiger leg extension. It's long and straight and it's flexed. As I point the foot, I'm going to reach that knee in like we did the other day without curling my tail. And I'm going to try to turn the knee open and then close it back up without moving my pelvis. And then reach it back, flex. So here it's as if I'm pushing the wall back and then I'm going to pull it in, knee hinging at the hip, open and close while maintaining my hip stability. Knee, open, close, push back. Open, close, push back, pull, open, close, push back. Now, I want you to bring it in, open that knee, stay there. So this is that dog at the fire hydrant, lift it. It's a very awkward position. Try not to lean off to the other side. Flex your foot, so peel the toe and the metatarsals back so you feel more power and strength in your foot. And start to stretch the leg to the wall to the side of you. We're doing our side kick in karate. Lift it up a little higher. And then point that foot and rest and relax. We're going to move through barrel rolls. Coming forward and around, lifting the spine, arching the spine. So this is a cat and cow variation. If it's too much for your wrist, just remain centered, but circle your body. Just moving the hips a little bit, as well as the spine. And then we'll come to our second side. So we're stretching and bending the knee, moving at the hip and the knee as well as the foot. Flex it back, point it, pull it in, lift the knee up to the side, pull it back to the center. Flexing it back, pulling it in, lifting it up, pulling it in. Crown of the head reaches. I'm going to run into my pole in a minute when I try to reach it up. I'm going to turn to you. So here's my dog at fire hydrant lift. Notice that I'm not leaning off to one side. Even as I attempt to kick and flex the foot out to the side, I don't adjust. Lift it up a quarter inch. And then slowly, gently set it back down, child's pose.
starting there with our hip stability. So looking at how moving the leg to the side is already challenging our ability to stay centered. And then moving that leg further makes it harder.
Let's come on up. Downward facing dog. Core planks is what I call these. So we're working with one leg lifted into three-legged dog. And then the knee coming forward towards the belly. My spine is engaging into that slightly curled position. So my tailbone is tucking, engaging my core. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Can I open and bring it back to center? We're going to keep going with this one. Open and close. Open and close. Open, stay open. If you're really feeling fancy, maybe you try to chaturanga your arms without your body turning. Bring it back up and touch down into the center. So any centering movements that you like, you can just set it into hands and knees and go into cat and cow. You're welcome to go through a full vinyasa. Whatever feels good to you. We meet in downward dog, and we've got the other side moving through that core plank movement. So the knee comes forward. So what I mean by having a slightly flexed spine, I'm not trying to be completely flat and just bend at the hip. So I'm trying to engage through the core, so my tailbone, pelvis is slightly round. Open, close, bring it back up. Open, close. Hold. Here's the hold. Engage your core by tilting that pelvis, zipping your ribs up, and take it back up. Here's your rest or your restful movements. Good. Make your way up to standing. Feet come forward to hands. Lift your heart to come halfway up. And bow forward. Without your knees knocking in, without your arches falling, roll it gently, slowly up. Stand. When you go to shift your stance, think about that shifting of the knee open. So coming into tree pose, the full pose here. As I shift my weight into my foot, I don't want to be turning already or leaning into the side. I'm going to turn the knee open, keep my body centered. Breathe. Think of growing taller and more to the center of you, more oriented to that midline. And then shake it out and step gently onto your second side. So even just the moment of stepping onto your foot, you don't want that hip to fall out. It shouldn't also be a tremendous squeezing motion. It's just a little bit of lift and engagement here. Lift up your arch, turn the knee open, keep your hips steady. As steady as we can. Good, and then turn it forward, shake it out, just reach up. Bow forward and fold. Look at your knees. Shake your head no, nod your head yes. Knees are pointed straight forward, tailbone drops, lift your belly and slowly come back up. I'm going to leave you standing today. Hopefully you're feeling your feet both grounded, but also engaging a little bit. Remember your hips are connected to your feet too. May we be happy, may we be healthy, may we be more at peace, and may we live with more ease. Namaste. Thanks for being here today.